At university, many of us spent far too much time in our local bar and dreaming about beautiful cars like these. But not our trader of the month. He took a much more long-term view and was trading Forex at the tender age of 21. And only 3 years later, he's the youngest ever trader of the month.
At first, I learned about it from one of my friends and I was appealed to it because it takes into account so many factors, as in it's affected by equity markets, affected by commodities and so on, and it's always open from Monday to Friday, so that sort of thing appealed to me because you can trade short term, you can trade very long term and so on.
You're excited about tonight? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the event, and I'm just hoping to meet some nice people and have some interesting conversation.
Okay, let's go then.
It is something that has become a tradition at Dukascopy Bank, which is awarding a recognition to the best trader of the month. Today it is my pleasure to invite up here onto the stage with me Mr. Shahani, who is joining us from Qatar. Please come up and join me if you would. Give him a big hand. He certainly deserves it with this incredible performance. Thank you very much for coming to Geneva. And now I think you waited long enough to take award of this beautiful symbol of transparency. It is actually a fully transparent watch, and we think it fits perfectly with Dukascopy Bank's philosophy of transparency. It is really something we take to heart in everything we do in our daily, day-to-day activities. Please accept this wonderful gift on behalf of Dukascopy Bank, and I hope you will enjoy it. And please give this gentleman another big hand. Thank you.
The champagne corks have stopped popping and the end has come to another memorable Geneva Forex event, and it's time to get down to business and find out what it takes to become Trader of the Month. So how would you describe yourself as a trader?
I'm more of probably an intraday trader, so I'm looking for basically to capture maybe about 50 or 60 or perhaps maybe about 70 of the daily range of the currency pair I'm targeting.
So how many times do you enter the market per week?
I would probably think about between probably around 7 to 12 times, so, and usually holding them no longer than a day and a half, and sometimes as short as 4 or 5 hours.
So why don't you trade more often and be a bit more aggressive about your trading?
I find it quite hard to find good entry points, as in obviously this market is not that easy to predict, so you always want to get into a position where you can have a fairly decent risk to reward ratio, so therefore even if you're right about 50 or 60% of the time, you're making quite a decent return. And when you're doing very short-term trades, you'll be looking at 5-minute, 10-minute charts, and then there's a lot of noise, as in a small 10-pip rise could just mean your stop loss, it could be run.
And how much risk are you willing to tolerate when you make a trade?
As most traders, I guess, there's a certain percentage of your net portfolio that you're willing to risk on a single trade. Mine, for example, is about 4 or 5%, which is pretty high for an average trader, I would guess. But I always look for rewards of at least double. Do you pay any attention to fundamental news, or are you purely a technical guy? As in, I'm more of a technical guy, but obviously you have to follow fundamental news, as in these events are what catalyzes the markets, as in risk on and risk off, which is really important these days, especially with the dollar rallying so much. And what about the pairs that you use? Because you're very different to our other traders in that you prefer to trade commodity currencies, it seems. So why is that exactly? I get the ideal volatility from those pairs, from basically the Aussie and the Canadian, whereas if you have pairs like the Euro and the cable, there's maybe sometimes you get 250, 300 pips. So for intraday trading, I prefer to use the Canadian and the Aussie. The commodity stocks, I think they're commodity currencies, sorry. So are they easier to predict? Or? I find they follow technical levels a little bit better, and also there's it's quite easy, as in for like an intraday trade, say for example right now with the Aussie maybe about 100-120 pip range a day, so it's fairly easy to enter a position with maybe just like a 30-35 pip stop loss and looking for about 70 or 80 pips. For the second month running, our winner is in his first month with Dukascopy, and in that short time, Siddharth here has got returns of 341%. So can you talk me through the chart you've got up here? These are just the Fibonacci pivot points, just S1, S2, S3, and R1, R2, and R3. It's quite important for me in terms of intraday trading, as in the pivot line says right now is 86.30 roughly. So when price action is lower than this, I would tend to take a bearish opinion of the market, bearish view. And just looking at the MACD, you would see that over here it breaks to a newer high. However, this is not really confirmed. There's a lower high in the indicator. And here once again, when it breaks the same price, there's an even lower high. So I would have a slightly bearish opinion of the market, and I would look to establish myself short if I was being particularly aggressive, perhaps just around the pivot, or just at R1, which is around 86.60, which is the previous high.
And why are you using the hourly chart?
I tend to hold my trades for about maybe between 8 and about 35 hours. So this is probably the most important thing for me, as in I'll probably have a call set up, so once it approaches say around here, I'll start looking at shorter term charts, like perhaps 10-15 minutes, and then using similar indicators, looking for a crossover to establish myself.
46% of his trades were made using dollar Canada, with Aussie dollar down by just 4%. Siddharth told me about his most successful trade of the month on Aussie dollar.
There's obviously a good bounce off the support level, and I managed to establish myself long on a retractment, and that was during Asia hours, I believe. It was probably around midnight GMT, so fairly quiet market hours. But I managed to, I think, get in fairly well at like around 82.20 and have a tight stop loss, I believe just below the figure of 81.90 or 81.85, and managed to ride it for about 100 pips.
So we've had winners from countries as diverse as Qatar, Italy and New Zealand. We've had short-term traders and long-term traders. We've had fundamental guys and technical guys. So get trading and you could find yourself on a plane to Geneva. I'm Peter Lovegrove for Dukascopy TV.